Hey everyone, Tony Winston here for Jazz Piano College. I was working a little bit today in one of the easier Jamie Aebersold books, this book right here. Yeah, Maiden Voyage, and taking a look at the song Summertime. I thought I'd use this opportunity to go through some really basic music theory about chords, maybe a few scales, because I know I have now 33,000 subscribers, and a lot of them are pretty new, and I know you're not going to dig back years and years to some of my old videos about this stuff, so let me just kind of go over some of the basics, all right? So nothing advanced in this video, or not too advanced anyway. All right, so we need to know major and minor chords and also seventh chords. So let's just talk real quickly about major and minor chords. A major chord starts with this major third interval, and you can tell it's a major third because there's 3 notes in between there, okay? Now, you add on that a minor third, because you see there's only 2 notes in between, so that's a minor third. So, a major third plus a minor third equals a major chord, and you need to be able to find this interval as well. It's a fifth. Now, fifths are easy to find as long as they're not B flat or B. So look, see? Very parallel. These are fifths. When you get to B, there's one here and there's one there because you've got the spot here where there's black keys missing, and that's why it works out that way. Then you're back to C. So you need those to make a major or a minor chord, a perfect fifth, and then here's the major and here's the minor. The minor's just the opposite. It's got the minor third on the bottom, 2 notes in between, and the major third on top with 3 notes in between. And really, most of these you can find them by ear. I'm going to play a few major chords in different keys. And you'll notice something about all of them, that if you listen to each note, hello, hello, hello. It's like what the Three Stooges sing at the beginning of their movies.
Hello. Hello. Dr. Howard, Dr. Fine, Dr. Howard, Dr. Howard speaking. I'm fine. So am I.
Right. And so that's all you have to do. Just pick a note, skip ahead by 3 notes in the middle there, put that note in there and find the fifth, and you've got a major chord. You want the minor chord, just take the middle note there, which is called the third, the root or the 1, the third and the 5, and you move them down. And they're called those numbers because you number each degree of the scale. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. So you've got the 1, the 3, the 5. And now let's talk about sevenths. You can have a major seventh interval or a minor seventh interval, so it depends on what kind of chord you're trying to make. If you're making a major seventh chord, it's this way. If you're making a minor seventh chord, it's that way. And then the other really important one is a dominant chord, sometimes called a 5 chord. You have a major triad and what we call the flat seventh. Now let's look at this chord in a few different keys. Let's go to D. We need a major triad and we need a flat 7. Now, that doesn't mean it's a black key. It just means that from the scale, and here we're going to use the scale of D, this note is the 7th. But if you want a flat 7, you have to lower it by a step. So this is D7, or D dominant 7th is the complete name for it, but it's a D7 chord. That's how you write the chord symbol. Okay? And this one is, do you know? It's the D major 7th. And then if you flat both the 3 and the 7, you get the minor 7th. Now, in any particular key, like we'll take the key of C, and you use just the notes of the scale, you will get these 3 types of chords. You will get the 1 chord, which is a major 7th, the 2 chord, which is a minor 7th, 3 is a minor 7th, the 4 chord is a major 7th, the 5 chord, and this is why a dominant chord is sometimes called a 5 chord, because you have a major triad and the flat 7th. You can just go down 2 steps from the root here and find it. That's the 5 chord, and this is the only place it's going to naturally occur, you see. Then we have another minor 7th, and then we have this chord, which, if you look, it starts off, it's got a minor 3rd, so you might think it's a minor chord, but it doesn't have the 5th. It has a flat 5, and then also has a flat 7, and you call this chord a minor 7 flat 5. It can also be called a half diminished chord. Now, by far, the 3 most important chords you're going to need are a major 7th chord, a dominant 7th chord, and a minor 7th chord. Those 3 will get you through a lot of songs. Some other chords that you might need: a major 6 chord and a minor 6 chord, which has the same major 6th interval, but has a minor triad. Now you might wonder what a minor triad with a minor 6 interval is, and that chord does not have an official name. You could say it's C minor with an added flat 6, or you could say it's an inversion of another chord. In this case, A flat major 7th, A flat major 7th. But, like I say, you're not going to run into this chord very often. Now, another chord that you definitely need to know is a diminished chord. All right, so let's take a look at a diminished chord. Theoretically now, it's a flat 3, a flat 5, and you double flat the 7th. But for all practical purposes, you can just think of it as a 6th, a major 6th, flat 3, flat 5. And you'll notice that if you start moving this chord up carefully in half steps, all right, that means every note moves up a half step. So this is C diminished. This is C sharp diminished. This is D diminished. You see, I'm moving each note up by a half step. And this is E flat diminished. But you'll notice that if I move that C down to this C, I'm right back where I started, as a C diminished chord. So you can actually call this chord a C diminished. You can call it an E flat diminished because it is. It's also an F sharp diminished. It's also an A diminished. So you see there's really only 3 diminished chords. This one, and that one. Then you just have an inversion of the same 3 chords. All right? And, you know, as you move this chord up in minor thirds, going like this in minor thirds, you're making another diminished chord, and it's the same diminished chord. So this is something that comes in very, very handy when you're starting to work on some jazz scales like the diminished scale. So, you know, if you see a chord progression that goes C sixth, for instance, and then goes E flat diminished, you can go that way. It may sound better to, you know, put the E flat on the bottom if that's what it calls for, but sometimes it really doesn't. You can try out different inversions of the diminished chord to see which one fits in the best. So if you're going to E flat diminished and the next chord was D minor 7 flat 5, yeah, that would be great. That would be great. But if the book said E flat diminished and the next chord was like a G minor, you know, instead of E flat diminished, you might try F sharp diminished, which is the same chord, which moves smoother into G minor. Say it's closer. Okay. Now, some other chords that you don't come across that often are the C plus chord, which is a C augmented chord, and it just simply means to raise the fifth to there. All right? Now, a lot of times you'll see a plus, and it doesn't mean that. Like, I'm going to look at this song Summertime, and I see a D7 plus 9 over there. I'm pretty sure that means a sharp 9, but, you know, the way people write chords sometimes can be very confusing and misleading. There is no real standardized way of doing particular chords. There's, you know, several options for each one, and I'll go over those. All right, let's take a look at Summertime, and you see right away it says D dash, okay? Like I said, there's different ways of writing the chord. That dash means minor. So D minor, and I have just written in a D minor 7th because to me that sounds good. Now in the next measure there is no chord symbol, so I can only assume that it's still D minor 7th. Okay, now here we get that D7, and you remember a D7 is a dominant chord. It's also called a 5 chord, and it will have a major triad and not a regular 7, but a flat 7. So this is D7, and the +9 means a sharp 9. All right, now we have not talked about this yet, but if this is the 7th, this is the 8th, this is the 9th, this is the 10th, but you would call it a 3rd because it is the 3rd of the chord. So here's the 9. Now there are three kinds of 9s. There's the 9 that comes out of the scale, so you would just write D7, and then you could put the 9 in parentheses, or you could even just write D9, which means D7 with a 9. There's a D7 with a flat 9, and a D7 with a sharp 9 up here. And on this particular chord, I'm going to leave the 5th out. That can be left out of many chords, especially dominant chords. It doesn't change the chord that much to put it in, but I'm going to leave it out. And the melody is up here. And the melody is the sharp 9 there on that last note. And then we have G minor coming up. All right. Now, in some charts, you might see something like F sharp augmented or F sharp plus. That would be just like doing this. F sharp, here's our major chord, here's the plus. It's just a very common kind of progression. And a better way to write it would be G minor, and then G minor with F sharp in the bass, and G minor with F in the bass. And that we get into what we call slash chords. And this is what a slash chord will look like. And here we have another crazy chord symbol. It's E minor 7th, flat 5, or E half diminished. The little circle would mean diminished. And in this case, when you draw a line through the circle, it's half diminished. All right, it's a poor term, but it's a good symbol because you know what it is right away, and you don't have to go E minor 7 and oh, there's the flat and there's the 5 and what does that mean? But E minor 7 is simply this chord, as you remember from our scale tone 7th chords, or they call them diatonic. Diatonic just means following the scale, and diatonic chords also follow the scale. The 1 chord is a major 7th, the 2 chord is a minor 7th, the 3 chord is a minor 7th, and that's what we want, E minor 7, flat 5, okay? And now here we have A7, again with a sharp 9, so I'll do the 7th chord. Here's the sharp 9, and I've left out the 5. Okay, this chord's got a lot of bite. You know, rock and rollers use it all the time. It's a nice chord. It also kind of has another meaning. When you see a sharp 9 or a flat 9 or some other altered tensions, or you can call them extensions, the 9, the 11, and the 13 of a chord. Let me talk about that for just a second. We've got the 3rd, the 5th, the 7th, the 9, an 11, and a 13. The 9 can be one of 3 things: flat 9, regular 9, sharp 9. Of course, this is the 3rd, so you'll never see a chord with 10 in it, like C 10th. That's just C major. Then there's the 11, which really doesn't fit on this chord. There's also a sharp 11, which does fit on this particular chord. Then this note is not a extension or a tension. It's because it's just the 5th of the chord. But then when we get up to this one, this is called the 13. 9, 10, 11, 12, 13. And we can have either a regular 13 or a flat 13. Now, anytime you take one of these 9s, 11s, or 13s, and you alter them, like you have a flat 9 or a sharp 9, you have an 11th, or just a sharp 11th would be the altered one. And of the two 13s, the flat 13 is the altered one. So anytime you have one of those four altered tensions, flat 9, sharp 11, or flat 13, and it's a dominant chord, you can actually put them all in there if you want. All right, now, it may sound like a shitty chord to you, but it actually can be used quite effectively. But when you have these altered tensions, you can call it an altered chord. And an altered chord usually means a dominant chord, right? You have to have the third and the flat 7, and an altered tension or several altered tensions. Okay, and I'll just use one in a little progression here. Okay, that was a G minor 9. We won't go in. And you know, if you don't know all of this, what I'm saying right now, it's okay. I'm just pointing out some of these kind of, we'll call them advanced concepts. You have a G minor, some 7ths, and a 9th actually. And here's that altered chord. I used a flat 9 and a flat 13. I also added the third in there also. And I took it out from down there. Now, we're getting pretty advanced here, so let me get back to some more basic kind of stuff here. So where were we? We were on A7, there's a sharp 9, and then we're back to D minor. And now, you know, you can do what's called reharmonization, where you can change not only just the root of the chord, but just the type of chord. If it's D minor, you could say, well, let's make that a D minor 6th. Or let's make that a D minor 7th. Or let's make that a chord I have not mentioned yet, which is a D minor or a minor chord with a major 7th. And they call this, simply enough, a minor major 7th chord. So D minor major 7th would be like this, and it kind of works there. And here we have G minor. Let's make it G minor 7th. We'll do this, G minor 7th, and then C 7th, and then F major 7th. Now, that's quite a bit of jumping, and there's a better way to do it. Instead of doing C 7th this way, it doesn't matter what order the notes are in. You can take the C and move it to the top. You can take the E here and move it to the top. It's still the same chord. And if I was doing G minor 7th and then want C 7th, it's pretty easy to just go like that. And you can do that with one hand. So you just move the top two notes down. Then the bottom two notes can move down to F major 7th. And that's our chord progression here. G minor, I added the 7th. C7, which is an inversion. And this chord, F triangle, which means F major, but it always means to add a major 7th or a major 6th. In fact, we can use both of them in that measure. And then we have E minor 7 flat 5 again. And here's our A7 with a sharp 9. Now, how are you going to do that? Now, another thing too, when you're just starting off and you're playing, chords with your left hand and just the melody with your right hand, many times you're going to run into yourself. Both hands will be in the same place. Because if you put the chords down here, they don't sound good. They need to be, mostly above lower C here. So, occasionally you can do something down a little bit lower, especially if you leave out a few notes. But in general, you want your chords kind of in this general area here. Let's say between G and G. So you can take your right hand, and even if the melody's written here, you could play it up an octave higher. It may not sound as good up there. This is a nice range for a melody in this general area of the piano. And you can leave out a few notes of the chord and stick your melody down in there if that works also. So let's see what happens with this song. See, I had to come down there like that. Now, if I'd played it up here, and notice I was going back and forth between D minor 7th and D minor 6th. And I think that sounds pretty nice, and we could call that reharmonization. Now we've got that D7, and because that melody note actually is the sharp 9 of the chord, right? We had D, D9, D7 with a sharp 9. You know, I don't have to think about it in the chord because the melody is actually playing that sharp 9. So, and then where are we going? Going to G minor. Let's do that same minor 7th, minor 6th thing. Now here, I went from E minor 7 flat 5 to A7. That's a dominant 7th chord. You know, it's the only one that they don't really spell it out. A major 7th will always say major 7th. A minor 7th will always say minor 7th in some form or another with the dash or the triangle or whatever. But a dominant chord just will have a 7th. And if it says A flat 7th, that just means you start on A flat. But this is A 7th. And I took these two notes and moved them down here because, you know, it's so smooth to go this way. Right? And now G minor 7th, there's no melody really going on here. Now here, if I wanted to play major 7th, I'd have to stick it down there. That's D minor. I added a chord here, and that's also kind of a reharmonization thing where you embellish the chords that are here. I could have just added the major 7th like that, perhaps. Or, I could have played it an octave higher. So I played a major 7th and then a major 6th. Because, the triangle, what the hell does that mean? I took the melody back down again. That's probably not a great idea to do, but I did it. And then we're going to do A7, sharp 9. And here I'm going to play an open voicing. Root, 3rd. I'm skipping over the 5, so that makes it an open voicing when you leave out something. And I'm putting a sharp 9 up here. I left out the root there. And add the melody note here. Now the sharp 9, as you recall, is an altered tension, right? A 9 is just a regular tension or extension. Sometimes they're called color tones. This is the sharp 9, so it's an altered tension. And the melody note happens to be it happens to be an altered tension because it's the flat 13. If you went 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, and you could think of it as a 6th. It's easier to think of it that way. But it's a 13 because it's a 7th chord. So once you get to 7, you've got to call these what they are, 13. And I flatted the melody is a flat 13. And so if you have an altered tension, you might as well add another one. That's why they did it, A7, sharp 9. All right, let me play the song once for you, just with the most simple, basic chords I can. I did some more advanced voicings here, very open voicings. I could have just gone, and then F. I could have inverted the A7. All right, and, A7 there, it's kind of a turnaround chord to get back to the beginning. That's a typical way of doing a turnaround, and then maybe add a chord to it. Okay, now another important thing about jazz. I guess I'm doing A big theory video here. I didn't realize it was going to be this long. Let's talk about improvisation. All right, you know, one of the greatest improvisers on piano in the jazz field is Bill Evans. And one thing you'll notice about when you listen to Bill Evans is you can always tell what song he's playing because he doesn't get too far away from the melody. When he improvises, a lot of times it's just the way he's playing his chords and the way he embellishes the melody. So let's just embellish the melody. So right there I could go, you know, add a few little notes in between there, or I could go. See, instead of just the two G's, I just kind of went around it like that. And you don't need to know any scales or anything like this. All you have to do is just listen and just pick out the notes that sound good to you. All right, so here we go. Let's embellish the melody. I would say probably the only scale you really need to know if you want to just start in jazz improvisation is the blues scale. And in this particular key, it's pretty easy. All right, it's D, F, G, call it G sharp or A flat, A, and C. So you got 3 white keys here, 3 white keys there, and a black key right in the middle. So summertime and the living is easy. I keep going to this chord from A seventh. This is what you call a rootless voicing. You know, it's an A chord, but I've left the A out, so we say the root is missing, and I just played those 3 notes. So, and it doesn't hurt to know some of these things. Like, for instance, E minor 7 flat 5, you can just play those 3 notes and then take the exact same hand shape and play A7 here. And it's an altered chord. It doesn't have the sharp 9 in it. You could put the sharp 9 in it. That's right there, the C. It's got a flat 13, but if you have one altered interval, another one usually sounds pretty good. So that's why I keep doing that, because I can't help myself. All right. Now, I don't think I will do too much more on this other than just play it through one more time, and I will put down in the description there a backing track from Jamie Aebersold. I don't think I'm, hurting his income any by doing this, because I think there are plenty of things like this already on YouTube, some of his backing tracks. I can say that on my bookshelf, I have a lot of these books. It probably takes up about that much room. So I probably have 30 or 40 of these books, and they are all excellent to play along with. And there's a lot of good information usually in the beginning of the books about what scales to play with which chords and how to make the chords. And this volume 54 is one of his kind of beginner play along book and CD set. So it's worth buying. It really is. All right, let's play it one more time, and we'll try to follow the chart pretty exactly. All right, here we go. another good way to improvise is just play the notes of the chord. Doing a little showing off. There's lots of techniques and kind of a little bit more advanced theoretical concepts, but they're all easy to understand if you understand the basics. So I hope this video is useful to you, especially if you're a beginner and you're just trying to learn chords. I would just say just learn as many songs as you can. You'll see the same chords popping up in so many different songs, and pretty soon they'll be like second nature. You'll be able to play them without even thinking about them, and then you're on your way to true mastery of jazz.